I used to think water kept secrets. That night, though, the river threw mine back at me, slick and loud, like it had waited for the perfect audience. I remember the sting of salt on my lips even though we were hours from the ocean, the panic trying to claw out of my chest, and the way the porch light hummed as if it knew what I'd just done. I heard tires crunch the gravel. A voice called my name, calm, almost kind. I told myself not to turn around. My name is Rowan, and I learned the hard way that love can sound exactly like a closing door if you're standing on the wrong side of it. I rent a small, drafty house near a lazy bend of the Rappahannock, the kind of place where cicadas make their own weather and the screen door never quite latches. I paint houses for a living, inside, outside, whatever folks will pay for, and I'm usually too tired to overthink. Lately, though, my body's been doing the thinking for me, jaw clenched, shoulders up by my ears, stomach stuck somewhere around my throat. It started as a drift, you know? Not a storm. Liam, my boyfriend, would come home smelling like a different detergent, sharp and floral, not ours. He'd shower right away, which he never used to do. When I asked how his day went, he'd smile with his mouth but not his eyes, then change the subject to something safe, like how the gnats were choking again or how the neighbor's dog had finally learned not to bark at everything with feet. I told myself I was reading into things. People change. Seasons shift. We've all got private little spaces where we stash the worst of ourselves. Then came the little sounds. His phone buzzing, then silenced. The soft thud of a locked bathroom door when he brushed his teeth. He started leaving earlier, saying the traffic was worse, that his foreman was riding him, that he needed overtime. He'd toss the words out like loose nails and I'd step on every one. My hands would shake while making coffee. I found myself counting the seconds it took him to answer a text, like faster meant honest and slower meant dangerous. I kept telling myself to breathe, to let the river do its thing and carry the junk away. But I couldn't ignore the way he said a name in his sleep, Mara, soft, apologetic, like a prayer he didn't believe in anymore. When I asked him about it, he laughed, not mean, just practiced. Said I misheard. Said maybe I was dreaming. He kissed my forehead and asked if I'd eaten. I smiled back because that's what you do when you're trying not to look like a fool. I started noticing other things without wanting to. A grocery bag in his truck with snacks I don't eat. A second travel mug that wasn't ours. Receipts folded into tight squares, like he'd clenched them in his palm before shoving them into his pocket. None of it meant anything by itself, but together it felt like a slow wind at my back, moving me toward a cliff I pretended wasn't there. I'm not proud of the next part, but pretending makes a person sloppy. It makes you miss the nail that's sticking out until it tears your skin. We went to a cookout by the river not long ago. I brought potato salad, he brought that careful charm he wears when he's restless. Our friend Jules joked about us being the steady pair, and Liam's grip on my waist went just a little too tight, as if she'd said something cruel instead of sweet. Later, while he was helping move a cooler, I caught him staring across the water like he'd left something on the far bank and wasn't sure he wanted it back. When I stepped beside him, he flinched like I'd surprised him in our own skin. On the walk home, I tried to say something gentle. My mouth dried up and my tongue felt like paper. We good? I managed. He squeezed my shoulder without meeting my eyes. We're fine, he said. Don't make problems where there aren't any. That was new. Not the words, those are old as dirt, but the way he said them, like I was a job he didn't bid on. That night, with the windows open and the river loud, I lay awake listening to the ceiling fan tick. I thought about work, about bills, about how my sister would tell me to stop guessing and just ask straight. But asking is a kind of cliff too, and I have never been brave about heights. I got up, padded to the kitchen, and stood in front of the junk drawer where we keep the keys nobody uses. My fingers sifted through batteries and rubber bands until they found a small, unfamiliar key, brass, smooth, a little nicked at the bow. It hadn't been there before. Or maybe it had, and I just never needed to see it. I rolled it between my fingers until the skin warmed. Somewhere outside, a truck downshifted and the dog across the lane answered with a single bark. I told myself I was ridiculous. Then I heard Liam's phone buzz on the nightstand, once, then again, quick and urgent, and stop. The silence afterward felt like a held breath. I set the key on my tongue like a coin and tasted metal, then slipped it into the pocket of my hoodie. I walked to the back door, eased the bolt with 2 careful clicks, and stepped onto the porch toward the dark path that leads to the boathouse. The path to the boathouse is mostly sand and root, the kind that grabs your ankle if you're not paying attention. I kept one hand on the railing and the other in my hoodie pocket, rolling that brass key until the edge bit the crease of my finger. The river was louder than usual, or maybe it was just me, breathing through my teeth like I was hiding from something with better hearing. The boathouse door sticks if you push in the middle, so I pressed low at the hinge and it gave with a wet sigh that felt, I don't know, guilty. Inside smelled like rope and gasoline. I clicked my phone flashlight and aimed it down, careful not to spray the windows. Dust turned in the beam like snow. The skiff's tarp was clipped tight, the toolbox sat where it always sits, nothing looked messy, and that might have been the part that scared me most. Chaos you can explain away. Order, when you're already scared, feels like someone cleaned on purpose because they knew you were coming. I tried the key on the padlock of the old locker by the pegboard. The lock was too big, the key rattled in the keyway like a loose tooth. I tried the tool chest for no reason except that my hand was already moving. Nope, different kind. You ever do that thing where you pretend you're not searching even though you're absolutely searching? I was doing that, pretending I'd come down to check the extension cords. I opened the cord bin. A second travel mug winked up at me, stainless, scuffed, not ours. My stomach flipped, and I put it back like it had burned me. There's a slatted shelf behind the spare life vests where we keep crap that doesn't have a home, fishing licenses, old sunglasses, half a roll of duct tape that's more dust than tape. I slid my hand back there and felt metal, small, square. I dragged out a tin cash box, the kind from yard sales. There was a keyhole. I didn't breathe. I brought the brass key up like it might scream. It slid in smooth. For a second I waited, telling myself to walk away, to leave it shut and, I don't know, live inside the question mark. Then my thumb turned the key before the part of me that wanted to be a good person could vote, and the latch popped with a click that rang around the rafters. Inside, an envelope, thick, rubber-banded, a cheap black phone face down, a strand of blue ribbon that smelled faintly like some expensive shampoo, and a motel key card from the kind of place that washes their signage with a power hose and calls it renovation. None of those things are crimes. None of them are, like, definitive. But my hands shook so hard the ribbon fluttered against my wrist. The phone was cold, dead weight. I didn't flip it over. I couldn't. The envelope had my name on it, my actual name, in Liam's blocky printing, and that made the room tilt. Why would he write my name and hide it out here like a time capsule? There was a small coil of nausea low and mean under my ribs. I listened to the night, half hoping for tires on gravel, half praying for silence. I wanted a witness and I wanted the room to forget me. I slid the envelope back into the box and, yeah, I hesitated like a coward. I told myself I'd open it somewhere that didn't smell like gasoline. I told myself I'd be kinder if I wasn't shaking. Lies make a warm little nest if you let them, and I was so tired of being cold. I tucked the phone into my hoodie pocket and the box under my arm, turned off my light, and edged the door shut with my heel. On the porch, the air felt damp and electric. Fireflies stitched little dashes through the dark like someone was trying to underline the night. From the bedroom window, a thin triangle of light cut the yard. Liam never leaves it on. Maybe he'd gotten up to pee. Maybe he was standing there watching the shape of me move through the dark like I was a problem he had to solve. Inside, the house felt smaller. Floorboards complained under my feet and I winced like they could testify later. I set the cash box on the kitchen table with a soft thud. The envelope sat on top like a dare. My mouth was dry enough that I could hear my tongue pull off my teeth. I reached for the rubber band and flinched when the fridge kicked on. I actually laughed, this stupid, breathless hiccup, because my nerves were so high everything felt like a trap. I pressed my palm to the envelope, felt the give of paper on paper. Something inside had edges. Photographs, probably. Or receipts. Or, I don't know, a letter that said he was leaving and he was sorry and I was right, I'd always been right, congratulations. I stood there long enough for my calves to ache. Then I slid the envelope under the toaster like that could make it disappear and pulled the burner phone from my pocket. It was scratched at the corners, cheap case half peeled. I held it like a dead bird. There was a line of grime around the front camera, smudges I didn't want to identify. I pressed the side button. Nothing. I pressed again, longer. The screen came up dim, low battery icon, that vacant black that makes your stomach drop. I was an inch from swiping when the floor creaked down the hall, slow, measured. The bathroom door clicked, water ran for a second, stopped. His steps paused, like he was listening to the same house I was, then headed toward the kitchen. I didn't put the phone down. I didn't hide the box. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to be caught so I could stop hovering over the cliff and finally jump. The hallway light bled into the room. Liam's shadow crossed the threshold first, long and easy, like he hadn't done anything wrong in his whole life. He rubbed his face, eyes adjusting, and saw the shape of the cash box, the outline of the phone in my hand. His jaw moved once, a chew with nothing in his mouth. "Rowan," he said, calm as a lake before a storm. "What are you doing?" The kitchen clock ticked like an insult. I didn't sit. Liam leaned on the doorframe, bare feet, sleep-creased cheek, eyes skimming the table like it might rearrange itself if he stared hard enough. "Rowan," he said again, softer. My throat pinched. The burner phone stuck to my palm. "I found a key," I said. "It opened this." He looked at the cash box, then me. A tiny flare in his nose. "You went through my stuff? You hid my name by a river." My shoulders burned. The fridge hummed and settled. "Do you want to tell me, or do I have to see it myself?" He rubbed his face. "It's not what you think." He moved into the kitchen, hands open. I was going to explain. I woke the screen. "Then explain," I said, and swiped. First up was a photo, grainy, motel lamp throwing fake gold. Proof 1. Liam's forearm in frame, scar from the ladder slip, a blue ribbon tied slack around his wrist. A woman's arm lay across his ribs, pale, freckle near the thumb. Print leaves on the sheets. My tongue glued to my mouth. I tilted the phone so the light hit it. He flinched. "That's old," he said, too quick. "It's not, Rowan, listen." I scrolled. A thread under a single letter, M, proof 2. Bubbles small and desperate. I heard myself read. "You wrote, she thinks I'm working late." She replied, "I can't keep sneaking." You said, "Just until I get her safe." My jaw clicked. "Who are you getting safe, Liam?" He closed his eyes, opened them older. "It's complicated. It's the opposite." A short, ugly laugh escaped. Simple enough to fit in a cheap phone and a ribbon. She, Mara, needed help. He said her name like it scraped. My stomach folded. "It's not about you and me." "Everything we do is about you and me," I snapped. Heat rushed my ears. I set the phone down so hard it rattled. My hands buzzed, I shook them like water. "I fed you while you tied bows at the roadside inn." He came closer, shoulders tight, soap sharp and floral, "Not ours." "I didn't touch your money," he said, like that mattered. "I paid for the room." I covered her meds a little. "I wasn't trying to hurt you." I stared at his thumbnail worrying a crack in the laminate, at the apology fogging between us. "You did it anyway," I said. My chest squeezed, bones pressing the cage. "And you hid it in a box with my name on it. Like you needed me to find it. Like you wanted me to stop you." He swallowed, sweat beaded his temples. "I was going to end it. I swear." She doesn't have anyone. I kept thinking if I could just float her through this patch. You floated her with lies you borrowed from me, I said, quieter. What does she need to be safe from? The softness in my voice made me mad at myself. His eyes flicked to the envelope. It isn't, Rowan, please. Don't use my name like a blanket. I touched the envelope, the paper gave. I didn't open it. My heart hammered, dull and hard. Are there more photos? More messages? A plan I'm not invited to? He exhaled like a tire losing air. I messed up. I'm trying to fix something that's not fixable. We stood in the hum and the ticking. My cheeks burned, my hands went cold. I lifted the phone again, stared at the blue ribbon until the image swam, then put it face down. When I finally spoke, the words felt steady because everything else wasn't. You're going to tell me everything, I said. Every favor. Every room. He ran his tongue along his teeth, searching for a story that wouldn't break on contact. She said she'd leave if I didn't help, he muttered. She said she'd disappear. I felt my jaw tighten until my molars buzzed. So you made me the fool to be her hero. The words tasted like pennies. I hope the cape fits. He winced. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I slid a finger under the envelope flap and felt the seal crack. You started this in the dark. We finish it in the light. Paper whispered open. He said my name again, soft and useless, as I looked down. The first thing in the envelope was a smell, paper warmed by my hands, a ghost of Motel soap clinging to the fibers. On top sat a folded note in his blocky print. Not a letter, exactly. More like instructions to a future version of me he hoped wouldn't exist. I slid it free. If you're reading this, it began, I'm trying to get someone safe. I need you to trust me a little longer. No names. No promises. My vision pulsed. Below the note, a stack of thin receipts, the kind that curl at the edges, ink rubbed gray from handling. Gas stations off the highway. A corner pharmacy I'd never used. A motel printout that said, apologies for the inconvenience, where the totals should be, like the paper itself was flinching. Tucked beneath, a child's crayon drawing, two stick figures holding hands, one taller, both smiling with square teeth, a blue ribbon scribbled between them like a bow that wouldn't stay tied. I stared at the drawing until the teeth started to look like fences. Whose kid, I asked, keeping my voice low, is thanking you? My fingers trembled, the paper clicked. Liam rubbed the back of his neck, eyes sliding away. It's not like that. It never is until it is. I set the drawing down, careful not to crease it. You left me out here with guesses while you packed an extra smile for a motel. His throat worked. I was trying to help. I kept meaning to tell you. I kept thinking it would be smaller the next time. Wrong direction, I said. Small things don't need boxes. I tapped the cash box lid with a fingernail and felt the sound in my molars. He reached for the envelope. I pulled it closer to my chest on reflex. The movement felt feral. My shoulders went tight, hot across the blades. Rowan, he said, softer, like he was afraid of spooking me. Please. Let me make this right. How? I asked. Do you have a time machine in the skiff? My laugh came out thin. Or is there a script where I clap and tell you what a hero you are for hiding me in my own house? He winced. I deserve that. I hated that he said it like a seasoning, sprinkled just enough guilt to taste. I picked up the note again and read the line about safe out loud, slow, letting each word bruise the air. Safe from what, Liam? His jaw shifted. From someone messy, he said. From herself. From the world. Pick one. So none of those answers, I said. My mouth felt chalky, I swallowed and it scraped. You don't get to be vague after carving me open. He stepped back, hands up, as if distance could tidy the damage. I'll fix it, he said. I'll cut it off. A small part of me wanted to believe him, to hand him the mess and let him mop. The larger part remembered the smell of not our soap and the blue ribbon against his wrist and the way he watched the river like it might erase footprints. No, I said. You don't get to cut it off. I do. He blinked. What does that mean? It means I'm taking the phone and the envelope, I said. You can keep your pretty speeches. You're going to go back to bed, and in the morning you're going to go to work like you always do, and you're not going to touch anything in the boathouse. I heard my voice flatten as I spoke, like I'd ironed it. You'll answer my texts in complete sentences. And you'll stay out of my way. He stared at me like I'd changed species. Rowan. Stop saying my name. My hands had stopped shaking. Instead, a calm heaviness settled in my forearms, like I was lifting something I'd trained for without knowing. You started this with secrets. I'll end it with facts. He searched my face. You're scaring me. Good, I said, and I meant it. Not out of cruelty. Out of balance. Out of finally standing inside my own skin without asking permission. We stood in the kitchen with the clock ticking and the fridge grumbling and the river pushing at the walls like it wanted to come inside. He nodded once, a small, defeated dip, then drifted down the hall, steps careful, door closing on a sigh. I didn't move until the silence settled into its new shape. Then I slid the note and receipts back into the envelope and tucked the crayon drawing into my hoodie pocket, the paper warm against my ribs. I palmed the burner phone, its cheap weight steady, and pressed the side button again. The screen blinked awake, battery a sliver. A single contact sat pinned at the top, my thumb hovered. I thought about Jules telling us we were the steady pair, and how Liam's hand had tightened on me like a warning. I thought about the blue ribbon and the shampoo that wasn't ours and the way he said safe like he'd borrowed the word. My chest felt tight, but underneath there was a clean line of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to find the person who had my boyfriend's wrist wrapped in her ribbon and ask her who exactly needed saving. I turned the phone to silent and slid it into my back pocket. I washed my hands at the sink just to have something to do, watched the water turn my skin pink, let the cool run until my pulse slowed under it. The house smelled like coffee grounds and paint and a new, sharp thing that might have been courage. I dried my hands on a dish towel and caught my reflection in the window, eyes red, jaw set, someone I recognized and hadn't seen in a while. When the sky finally leaned from black toward blue, I laced my boots, took the keys that were mine, and stepped onto the porch. The air tasted like metal and rain. Gravel shifted under my heels as I headed for the road, the burner phone already warm in my palm as I brought up the contact and pressed call. The call rang twice and a husky, guarded voice slid in. Hello? Not curious, careful. I'm not him, I said. Please don't hang up. Silence, then traffic somewhere, a soft breath. Who is this? Someone who cooks for the man wearing your ribbon. My throat tightened. I'm not here to scream. A dry laugh. People say that right before they do. I just want the truth. Fabric rustled, like she moved to a corner. When she spoke again the edges were tired, not kind. You've got the wrong picture. He's helping me. That's one picture, I said. I need the frame. I told him not to drag you in. Heat crept up my neck. He did when he used our house as storage. I swallowed. Can we meet? Public. A beat. Diner off the highway, flickering sign. 20 minutes. The line clicked. I drove. The diner smelled like burned coffee and syrup. A girl sat in the back booth, hood up, hands wrapped around a paper cup. A blue ribbon peeked from her sleeve. Cat-bright eyes, red rims. She clocked me and didn't flinch. You're Mara, I said. You're Rowan. She slid deeper into the booth. I sat, the vinyl side. What does he think he's saving you from? She watched brake lights smear the window. Everything. I didn't ask for that. I asked for rides. For quiet places that aren't shelters. For someone to be there after a clinic when I couldn't lift my head. A shrug. He made it bigger. The word clinic rang hard. A pale line marked her wrist where a band might have been. She tugged her sleeve down, already done with being seen that way. I'm not your enemy, I said. I'm not your friend either. Good. Friends ask for favors. My heart ticked in my teeth. Did he paint me as mean? Controlling? Too dumb to understand? She almost apologized with her eyes. He said you were kind. That you'd tell him to help me. He's scared you'll tell him to leave. He knows me. Do you know him? She asked. It landed heavy. Better than I did yesterday. For what it's worth, she murmured, I told him to stop. It felt like stealing from you, even when he paid. Stealing crawled over my skin. I rubbed my knuckles until they ached. Did you love him? She thought, really thought. No. I loved the way he wanted to be seen. That's different. Relief came cold then hot. I drank coffee that cut my tongue. He thinks he's the only river, I said. I'm done being the bank. Mara leaned in, palms flat. Then stop him. Use the way he wants to be the hero. The plan unfurled simple and mean. He's expecting you? She nodded. After his shift. The motel by the truck stop. Text him from your number, I said. Tell him you want something bigger. Public. Say you're tired of bleach rooms. Say you want a proper dinner by the river. My voice went flat. I'll handle the rest. You're not going to hurt him, are you? Not with my hands, I said. With his story. She weighed that, then nodded. No numbers, no promises. She slid out and was gone. I sat, buzzing, body pointed at the door. On the way out I bought a slice of pie I didn't want, just to hold a receipt that said I'd been ordinary while planning the opposite. In the parking lot I leaned against my truck and breathed until my ribs loosened. The burner was warm in my palm. I typed, dinner by the river. No more hiding. I added a bow emoji, erased it. Too cute for what I needed. I wrote, I want to be seen. My thumb hovered. I imagined his face, relieved, puffed up, absolutely sure he was about to fix someone. Perfect. I hit send and watched the message shrink into the tiny green bubble of a promise he couldn't keep without breaking everything else. At home the river flashed between trees. The house waited with its screen door and the hum of the fridge pretending to be normal. I set the pie uneaten on the counter, the receipt under it like a permission slip. My hands felt steady. I took the blue ribbon from my pocket and tied it around my wrist, loose, a reminder and a fuse. If he wanted to be seen, he'd get a crowd. If he wanted to play rescue, I'd give him a stage with nowhere to exit. The phone buzzed once. Where? He wrote. I looked at the dark bend of water through the window and chose a place he'd think was romantic and I'd know like the back of my blistered hand. I started typing, hearing gravel already. I told him the gazebo by the public boat ramp, the one with the string lights that never all work and the view of the bend where fishermen like to pretend they're alone. I want to be seen, I typed, thumbs steady, and hit send on Mara's phone. She'd slid it across the diner table with a tired little shrug, like trust wasn't a luxury anymore. Now, back in my kitchen, the same phone lit up in my palm. Where? He'd already asked. I sent the location and added, no more rooms that smell like bleach. My mouth was dry, I could taste metal. He replied with a heart and, soon. Of course he did. He loves racing toward a story he can fix. I needed a crowd that didn't look like a crowd. I texted Jules, spur of the moment picnic by the river. Bring whoever. I owe you a laugh. She called immediately because she's not a cat, she doesn't pretend she didn't see it. You okay? She asked, voice soft in a way that made my ribs ache. I told her I was trying something honest and stupid at the same time. Silence, then a sigh. I'll bring a blanket and a cake from the grocery freezer. If this is a breakup, I'm wearing waterproof mascara. It's not a breakup, I said, and felt my tongue catch on the lie. Just, show up. I packed a cooler with things that keep their shape when your hands don't. Grapes, carrots, a block of cheese you have to saw at. I put the crayon drawing in a Ziploc like it needed weatherproofing, slid the envelope under the cooler ice so the paper would hold its edge, and looped the blue ribbon twice around my wrist, looser this time. The knot sat over my pulse, a small, deliberate ache. Every time I flexed my hand, the ribbon tugged like a question. Driving over, I noticed every little thing that had always been there: the busted guardrail where someone shaved it too close, the kudzu trying to steal the fence, the church sign with a missing letter so it promised, grace for all who flotr. I barked a laugh I didn't feel. My shoulders were up near my ears. I forced them down and it felt like lowering a beam onto unsteady sawhorses. At the landing, the water smelled like rain that hadn't decided yet. A few folks already milled around, dog walkers, a couple sharing fries, a kid with a fishing net bigger than his intentions. Jules arrived with a sun-bleached blanket and a plastic cake that sweated sugar. She hugged me, felt my stiffness, and didn't push. You look like you're about to jump out of a plane, she said. I'm not the one falling, I said. My hands felt too big for my wrists. I told her, not all of it, but enough. Motel, ribbon, the word safe said like a borrowed shirt, and asked her to be loud if I went quiet. Loud is my only volume, she said, trying to joke, but her eyes were glossy. You sure you want witnesses? He wants to be seen, I said. I'm just turning on the light. She texted the group chat, River Snacks, no drama, with a winky face because she's a liar on my behalf when I need one. People trickled in, curious and aimless the way people are when the weather invites them to make bad choices look like fresh air. I laid out the food. My fingers were clumsy with the cheese. I could feel my heartbeat in my gums. Every time a truck downshifted on the road above, my skin prickled like I'd been named. Mara's phone pinged again. Parking, he wrote. You'll know me, I typed back, and watched the 3 dots dance like a taunt. Always, he sent, and my stomach turned over hard enough to make my eyes sting. For a second I saw him the way I used to, the guy who let me sleep while he did the early coffee, who remembered which brush I liked for trim work, who learned the names of my clients' dogs so he could wave at them without looking like a thief. Then the image slid and I saw the ribbon on his wrist in that photo and I felt my molars grind until my jaw clicked. Jules followed my gaze to the parking lot. He here? She asked. I nodded, couldn't force words. She squeezed my elbow, then hovered close like an umbrella you don't have to earn. The world narrowed to the crunch of gravel. Liam stepped into view carrying nothing, like he showed up to be handed things. He wore that half-smile that works on waitresses and old men at hardware stores. He scanned the gazebo, blanket, cooler, cake, familiar faces, and didn't see me right away because I was in the shade by the railing, heart banging against the ribbon. He straightened when he spotted a flick of blue near my wrist, took half a step, and then froze when I stepped out, full in the soft light that makes everyone honest. His eyes did a quick math, Mara's color on my skin, the burner-shaped rectangle under the edge of the cooler, Jules watching like a referee with a whistle she is absolutely going to use. A dog barked even though nobody asked it to. Someone laughed at a joke that had nothing to do with us. The river kept doing its job, pulling everything past the point where we were standing. Hey, I said, voice normal, even bored, like I was greeting a neighbor at the mailbox. You made it. He swallowed and nodded, the tendons in his neck drawing tight. You said you wanted to be seen. I do, I said, and turned my wrist so the blue flashed. So do you. He glanced around, Jules, the couple with the fries, 2 guys arguing softly about a lure, faces he knew enough to care about. He wet his lips. Rowan, he tried, quiet, warning stitched into the syllables. It didn't work anymore. The sound didn't reach me. I towed the cooler closer, the envelope pressed cold against the ice inside, the proof of a life he built in a locked box under our roof. My fingers tingled, my mouth went cottony. I lifted the lid and let cold air roll out like a small weather front. "Sit," I said, nodding at the bench, my voice steady in the way I only ever hear it when I'm holding a brush and risking someone's crown molding. He sat, because he still recognizes the sound of me when I mean it. Jules drew nearer, casual like a cat near a table, and handed me a plastic knife. I took it, not for cutting cake. For pointing. For underlining. "You love a rescue," I said, not loud but not private. "Here's your audience." The river threw little sparks off the water, and for a second it felt like the world was applauding nothing. I planted my feet, knees soft like I was climbing a ladder, and held the plastic knife like a pointer. "You love a rescue," I said again, steady. "Here's your audience." Liam's smile tightened. His gaze kept hitting the blue at my wrist like it scalded. Jules drifted behind me, a small, fierce planet tugging the tide. A couple of teenagers paused by the railing with a milkshake, the straw bending between them. Nobody knew what they were looking at yet. I planned to tell them. "Rowan," he murmured, that warning lilt, that don't make a scene voice people use right before they run. My fingers tingled. I flipped the cooler lid back and pulled out the Ziploc. The crayon drawing stared up, square teeth, blue bow, 2 stick people. I set it on the bench between us, flat as a confession. "You packed this with receipts and a note about getting someone safe." The word felt borrowed in my mouth. "Say it plain." He didn't sit taller or smaller, he went still, which is worse. "It's not what you think." I laughed, short and mean. "I'm done thinking alone." I slid the burner phone from under the cooler edge and tapped it awake. The battery icon looked like a bitten nail. I turned the screen so it faced him. The Motel amber photo lit his scar, the ribbon slack on his wrist, the ghost of a second person just out of frame. I didn't wave it around. I barely lifted my hand. People notice even small fires. Jules let out a breath that sounded like a match. The teens traded a look. The guy with the fishing net paused mid-cast. Liam's throat hopped. "We shouldn't do this here," he said. "You chose here every time you washed off and came home." My voice surprised me, quiet, almost kind. "You told her I thought you were working late." I hit the thread, scrolled just enough. "Just until I get her safe." "Who is she, Liam?" "Don't say, a friend." His jaw clicked. "Mara needed help," he said, careful, testing each word for loose boards. "I gave her rides. Look, I paid for a room sometimes when she had nowhere to go." "That's it." Jules barked a soft, disbelieving laugh. "With ribbons?" Color rose under his stubble. "It was stupid," he muttered. "A joke." "You don't get to call it a joke because I'm standing in the punchline," I said. My cheeks felt hot, my hands went cool. "You told me we were steady while you built a second story on air." I tapped the drawing. "There's a kid in this somewhere." "You tuck that in a box with my name and expect me to be gracious?" He stared at the paper like it might bite him. "It's not what you think," he said again, voice fraying. "Then fix the sentence," I said. "Tell them what you are." I tipped my head toward the people who'd stopped pretending they weren't listening. Calm, like I was offering him a brush. "Hero, liar, caretaker, cheat, pick a coat and wear it out loud." His eyes begged me for a door. There wasn't one. The wind shifted, the string lights above us flickered, 3 dead, 1 stuttering, the rest stubborn. He swallowed. "I made a mistake," he said to the table, then looked up and aimed the next part at me like a lifeline. "I didn't want to hurt you." Jules' voice cut clean. "But you did." He flinched. My jaw unclenched on a small ache. "So here's the deal," I said, and I felt my pulse stop trying to outrun itself. "You're going to apologize to me here, where you built your story about saving someone. Not in our kitchen where secrets grow." Right here, where the river hears it and these faces do too. You're going to say you lied, and you're going to say you chose you. He stared, searching for the version of me he could talk down. I kept not being her. A Labrador shook nearby, tags chiming, the smell of damp dog and fried food pushed through the gazebo. He dragged a hand through his hair. I'm sorry, he said then, fast, like ripping tape. I lied. I chose. He glanced around and softened the word. Wrong. Say me, I said. Say you chose you over me. He hesitated. The pause was everything. Then, I chose me. Something in my chest unclasped and fell quiet. I didn't cry. I nodded once like we'd finished a fence post. Jules inhaled, shaky. The teens widened their eyes at each other, greedily sipping the moment like it was soda. And the rest? I asked. The ribbon, the rooms, the messages that made sure your cape stayed ironed? I was trying to help, he said, already shrinking from the edges. She was in a bad way. Then you helped by telling her the truth, I said. No more motel mercy. If you want to be useful, be clean. His mouth opened. Closed. He looked smaller on that bench. I wanted to feel relief and found only a clear, cool space where the panic had lived. We're done, I said, not cruel, just finished. You can collect your things when I'm not home. Murmurs rose like gnats. He reached for my wrist, reflex, not right, and stopped when I lifted the ribbon between two fingers. Don't touch me, I said, soft. Not now. He stood so fast the bench scraped. For a heartbeat I saw that other version of him, the early coffee, the careful hands, and then it flashed out. He looked past me, toward the path, eyes snagging on something I couldn't see. A shadow shifted beyond the gazebo's posts. Jules' fingertips pressed my elbow. Don't turn around, she whispered, eyes narrowing. Let him tell us who he just saw. His eyes snagged on the shadow beyond the posts, and all the air went out of his chest. Mara, he said, not loud, caught. I didn't turn. I watched his face instead, the way his mouth pulled like a bad stitch. My hands went damp, the ribbon on my wrist sucked to my skin. Jules' fingers pressed my elbow once, an anchor with chipped nail polish. Footsteps slid on gravel. The hood came down. Mara stood there, smaller than the story he'd made of her, eyes swollen from too many near cries. No ribbon. Just a tired girl with a spine. She clocked the blanket, the cake, the cheap phone glowing dull in my palm. You texted, she said to him, voice flat. Said you wanted to be seen. I lifted the burner like a mirror. His jaw clenched, the crowd quieted that particular way people do when something private is turning public and no one wants to blink. A gull screamed like a bad violin. Somewhere a kid asked for fries. My tongue stuck to my teeth, I freed it with a click. You told me not to come, Liam said to her, soft, coaxing. You said you were scared. I said I was tired, she answered. You heard scared because it made you necessary. He flinched. I felt that in my own shoulders. He tried for me then, palms out. Rowan, this. Keep going, I said. You're doing great without me. Mara's gaze shifted to my wrist. Can I have that? She asked, nodding at the blue. I don't want him wearing it in his head. I slid the ribbon off and handed it over. My fingers buzzed with relief I didn't expect. She looped it through her fist, not on. You told me she hated you, she said to him quietly. That she'd be relieved when you left. My chest pinched. He shook his head fast. I never. You said you were sleeping on the couch, she cut in. Said she didn't look up when you came home. You said you were invisible. Jules let out a sound like, wow, wrapped in pity. He shot her a look, then centered himself like a man trying to find his light. I'm trying to help. That's it. He patted the bench as if the kid's crayon drawing might hatch a better answer. She needed rides. Somewhere to sleep sometimes. I covered a couple dinners. I'm sorry. Mara's mouth twitched. Dinners with locks on the doors. He round-shouldered with embarrassment. It was what we could afford. Stop saying we, I said. My voice surprised me by how calm it sounded. You mean you without me. You chose to build a small, private stage and cast us both without asking. He stared at the river like it might prompt him. I was going to tell you, he mumbled. When? Jules asked, louder. After the credits? Mara slid her hands into her sleeves. You also said after the scan you'd be honest, she added, eyes flicking to me like she wished she could swallow the words. You kept moving the line. Scan. The word hit odd and heavy. He blinked at her, a quick flash of anger that hid under concern. Don't, he hissed. I clocked that and tucked it away, a shard with an edge I'd use later. Here's what's happening, I said, because my legs were vibrating and I needed them to listen to something. You told me you were saving someone. You told her you were invisible. You were neither. You were just, loved, and bored, and a little in love with the way a disaster makes you look necessary. His mouth opened to argue, nothing arrived. The wind picked up, lifting the corners of the crayon drawing. I flattened it with a fingertip. My hand shook once and stopped. So we're ending the triangle, I said. Not with screaming. With clarity. Mara glanced between us, wary but interested. How? You're going to speak to her like I'm not here, I told Liam. You're going to tell her what you told me in our kitchen. And then you're going to leave with neither of us. Not because we're punishing you, but because you don't get a soft place to land after building 2 docks. He sagged, then stiffened. This is cruel. This is clean, I said. Cruel was in the motel. He drew breath, tried to square it. Mara, he said, turning fully to her, I shouldn't have asked for more than you offered. I shouldn't have let you think. She snorted, gentle but cutting. You didn't let me think. You fed me lines. You're not a monster. You're greedy. The honesty made his face crumple a hair, and for a beat I hated that I still recognized the boy who learned my favorite brush. Then I let the recognition pass, like weather. He reached toward the burner. I kept it. One more thing, I said. You'll delete the thread while I watch. And then you'll apologize to me again, properly, and mean it the way a grown person means it. He stared at the screen like it had teeth. Then he nodded, slow. Okay. His thumb hovered, trembled, dropped. Messages slid away into blank. He swallowed. I'm sorry, Rowan, he said, looking at my face instead of the floor. I chose me. I lied. I wanted to be the good guy more than I wanted to be a good partner. The words landed inside me with a dull, exact weight. I breathed, and my ribs actually expanded. Thank you, I said. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Just acknowledgement exchanged for oxygen. He stepped back like he'd been unhooked. A car door thumped beyond the lot. The sound snapped his head around so fast it looked painful. His eyes went wide, then shuttered. Mara followed his gaze and went paper white. Jules' hand tightened on me. Who? She whispered. Liam's lips shaped a name without sound. I saw it anyway. Not Mara. Something older. The kind of name you only says when you're out of stories. The name he mouthed wasn't Mara. It was Ma. The soundless shape hit me harder than a shout. He stepped back like the posts had moved. Gravel crunched again and a woman came into the light, small, scarfed, stubborn jaw that matched his. Her eyes swept the blanket, the cake, the faces, then settled on Liam with a look that said patience had run out. Liam, she said, voice frayed but steady. You didn't answer. They called me. I got tired of waiting. He went gray at the edges. Mom, you can't. I can, she said. Because it's my name on the forms and my ribs in the tube and your promises on my voicemail. She clocked the blue ribbon in Mara's fist, then the bare spot on his wrist where it had been in the photo. Something passed over her face that wasn't surprise. Oh, she said, a tired kind of oh. So that's where you've been. It's not you, the woman said gently. It's the story he likes to tell himself. My mouth went dry enough to crack. Jules's fingers grazed my sleeve, checking that I was still in my body. The woman set a grocery sack on the bench beside the crayon drawing and it rustled with pill bottles and paper. He tried to herd her away with quiet hands. Mom, please. Not here. Here is where you are, she said, not unkind. So I came. Her gaze lifted to me. You must be Rowan. I nodded because my voice had folded into itself. I'm Ruth, she said. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. He always brings home other people's souvenirs. Something inside me lurched. I heard myself ask, after the scan, he was supposed to tell me, right? Her eyes flicked to Mara, then back to me. He was supposed to tell someone, she said. He likes to hold bad news like it's a baby no one else can carry. Liam stepped between us, palms up. Stop. Please. His voice cracked. I have it handled. You don't have it handled, Jules said, gentle as a hammer. You have it spread out on a bench by the water. Mara's shoulders curled. He told me she didn't want him around, she said to Ruth. That she had people. Ruth snorted, not mean. My people are the nurses with stickers on their badges, she said. I told him that. He came anyway with that look like he could clean the sky. The knot in my chest loosened into anger that felt almost clean. So the ribbon, I said to him, holding his eyes, wasn't for romance. It was a table with a box, and you needed to feel like the man who shows up. He stared at the boards. I wanted something good to be true, he muttered. Then stop stapling it to lies, I said. My hands were steady now. We're done. You go with your mom. You take your show home. You don't darken my door until your facts make one sentence without breaking. Ruth looked at me with complicated gratitude I didn't want and almost couldn't bear. Thank you, she said quietly. For not turning this into a fire. Liam reached toward me, stopped, let it fall. He looked at Mara with a flinch of shame that wasn't quite real. I didn't mean to use you, he said. She nodded, not forgiving, just filing it. I know, she said. That's the problem. Ruth lifted the sack. The pill bottles chimed. Come on, she said to him, softer now. I have an early thing. The words were nothing and everything. He nodded, broken open and still somehow careful about how he looked broken. He started to follow her, then turned back, desperation surfacing. Rowan, I'll make it right. I will. Stop promising, I said. Start leaving. He took one step, another. The crowd let out the breath it had been holding, and the gazebo felt too bright. My legs went watery. Jules caught me by the elbow. Mara stood small, ribbon clenched like a lifeline she didn't want. I looked at both of them and felt the river inside me move again. This isn't finished, I said, mostly to myself, and picked up the empty cash box. The boathouse first. Then I'll decide the rest. Jules nodded like we'd agreed to split a check. I'm driving, she said. Mara didn't ask if she was invited. She just fell in step, eyes on the path where Liam and Ruth had disappeared, like the truth had dropped breadcrumbs neither of us wanted to eat. We headed for the lot, the cooler light in my hand, the burner a flat, cold weight in my pocket, and the night opened its mouth for the next part. Jules drove like the road might decide to swerve under us if she didn't stay fierce with it. I sat rigid, palms flat on my thighs, feeling the old truck's vibration climb my bones. Mara was small in the back seat, hood up, cheek on the belt strap like sleep might come if she pretended. The river kept appearing between trees in dull strips, a steady metronome for the part of my chest that wouldn't slow. I kept tasting that thin, metallic fear, the one that lives behind the tongue. When we turned down the dirt lane to the boathouse, my stomach tightened the way it does right before a ladder wobbles. The door stuck like it always sticks. I pressed low at the hinge and it gave with that wet breath. Gasoline and rope. A hint of river rot. I clicked my phone light toward the floor. Dust spun. The skiff's tarp was clipped tight like it wanted to be a lie. "You sure you want to do this?" Jules asked, already rolling her sleeves. "No," I said, and pushed inside anyway. The locker's padlock was still too big for the brass key. I tried it knowing it wouldn't work, because that's who I am, someone who checks again even after knowing. I set the cash box on the workbench, the scarred wood nicked from 100 normal afternoons, and opened the junk shelf behind the life vests. My fingertips landed on a soft, deliberate shape, a canvas pouch, drawstring, bound like a secret that needed to breathe. I tugged it out. Inside, Motel shampoos with frilled caps, a spool of blue ribbon, a hospital bracelet collapsed into an oval, and a folded appointment card with Ruth's name spelled neat in someone else's careful hand. Mara made a noise in her throat. "I didn't ask for props," she said, almost apologizing to the room. Her hands were stuffed in her sleeves so tight I could see knuckles. I set the bracelet on my palm. It was still warm from the pouch. "He doesn't cheat," I said, voice quiet. "He curates." Jules blew out a breath that wasn't a laugh. "He built a roadshow and called it care." There was a spiral notebook under the pouch. On the cover he'd written "fixing" in block letters. I looked at it for a long second, then opened to whatever page wanted to be seen. Lists. Little boxes to tick. Keep Mara stable. Keep Mom calm. Keep Rowan safe. Next to my name, a smaller box, tell her when I'm ready. Blank. The page throbbed in my hand like a dumb heartbeat. I felt heat climb the back of my neck, and with it, this thin, sad relief. I hadn't been crazy. I had just been managed. Jules read over my shoulder, quiet now. "He thinks in chores," she said. "People as tasks. People as mirrors," I muttered. The ribbon's edge prickled my wrist where the dye had bled earlier. I rubbed the line with my thumb like I could erase it. I tucked the bracelet back in the pouch, then paused and slid it into my pocket instead. Not to keep. To carry. There was an envelope under the notebook, sealed and labeled in that same heavy print, "Rowan, after." The word made my ribs lock. For a second I couldn't look straight at it, the room ghosted sideways. I slid it with a paint can opener because my hands knew that tool better than knives. Inside, keys, two, notched different, taped to an index card, a note that said, "Storage, just in case," and a snapshot of me on the porch from some soft evening where I'd been laughing at nothing with my head thrown back. I didn't remember him taking it. That stole my air worse than the keys. Mara swallowed. "He thinks he's gentle," she said. "He thinks planning is kindness." I nodded without meaning to. My jaw had started to ache again. "He thinks control is love," I said, and it came out low, like truth that had been waiting with its back to the door. I didn't want a storage locker worth of his explanations. I wanted something clean. I slid the keys into the pouch and tied it shut. "I'm not wrecking Ruth to break him," I said, and I felt the decision settle in my shoulders. "I won't be that person." Jules' chin lifted, pride flickered through the tightness in her face. "So what do we do?" "We turn off the stage lights," I said. "He doesn't get to be the hero in private anymore. If he wants to help, he'll have to do it where help is boring. Forms, rides at noon on workdays, sitting in quiet rooms without being thanked." I heard the steel in my own voice and didn't look away from it. "And he doesn't get me while he learns." Mara shifted her weight, relief and regret wrestling under her eyes. "What about me?" she asked, not a plea, a logistics check. "You get rides to your actual places," I said. "You get a couch that isn't behind a lock. You get my number, not because I'm better, but because I'm not hungry for your story. She nodded, quick, eyes shiny, then swallowed it back like a grown-up. Jules squeezed my arm hard enough to bruise. We'll make a schedule, she said. We'll rope in the group chat. Nobody has to be a cape. I breathed. The air found its way all the way down for the first time since the gazebo. Tomorrow, I said, and corrected myself because I heard the old lie in that word. Soon, I'll pack his things. I'll leave the box and the notebook out on the porch with a note addressed to Ruth, not him. She can collect what's hers. He can see himself in the daylight without me narrating it. We stood there, the three of us, in the small stink of rope and gas and river, and the quiet didn't feel like a trap. Outside, the water kept talking to itself, unconcerned. I closed the locker I couldn't open, killed the phone flashlight, and let the dark take back its corners. My hands felt steadier on the door than they had on the box. On the porch I paused, that prickle between my shoulder blades back like weather. He has backup places, I said, hearing it as I knew it. He won't come here tonight. He'll go somewhere he can pose as a solution. Jules made a face. Then we'll make sure there's nothing to solve. We started up the path, the canvas pouch heavy and stupid against my hip. The screen door sighed behind us like a witness with nothing else to add. Ahead, the river bend flashed dull pewter between trunks. I tightened my grip on the pouch, felt the bracelet through the fabric, and let one more plan find its shape as the ground rose toward the road. Jules' headlights smeared the trees, and the canvas pouch thumped my hip every time the truck bounced. I kept one palm on it like it could run. Mara rode quiet, hood up, knees pulled in, the kind of small that's really just someone trying to hold themselves together. Storage? Jules asked, eyes on the road. I nodded. He labeled a key, just in case. I'm curious what case he meant. The place sat behind the old feed store, rows of roll-up doors under buzzing lights, gravel gone to dust. The gate was open because someone had left a sofa half in, half out like a tongue. I tasted iron. The tag on one of the keys said a 17 in his block print. Figures he'd label it like a tool drawer. We found the unit, and for a second I just held the cold loop of key and breathed through my teeth. My hands didn't shake. My knees did. The lock turned easy, like it had been waiting. The door coughed up and the smell was cardboard and winter. He'd stacked it like a polite apocalypse. Clear bins with blue lids, of course, each labeled MOM, Mara, Rowan, backups. A camp chair, a folded card table, a box fan, a cheap LED lamp. On the wall, a whiteboard with a week sketched out and blank magnets parked in the corners. Under it, a crate of dry erase markers and a rag. I felt Jules watch me clock it all. He built a deployment kit, she whispered, half horrified, half impressed against her will. I swallowed, my tongue felt like old paper. I went to the Rowan bin first because I'm not above hurting my own feelings. Inside, a spare hoodie like mine, travel-size shampoo of the brand I used before we switched to the cheap big bottle, a Polaroid of me on a ladder, laughing at something to my left, caught good. A list in his square hand, caffeine afternoon? No. She pretends she can. Give her water. Remind, eat. I looked at the words until they blurred. I wasn't sure if I wanted to set the bin on fire or hug it. He thinks caretaking is love, I said, voice small to my own ears. And he thinks secrets are caretaking. Mara opened Mara with 2 fingers like it might bite. Half a dozen Motel mini soaps. A pharmacy bag with a receipt stapled on, total blanked out by a thumb rub. A composition notebook, names and numbers for clinics, a bus schedule, a gift card with $12 left, a folded flyer for a support group. Her throat worked. I didn't ask for this much, she whispered. I asked for a ride in quiet. She rested her palm on the notebook anyway, like you do when a thing is both wrong and useful. Jules crouched at a MOM. Coiled extension cord. A heating pad still in plastic. A zip-up pouch stuffed with folders, printouts with Ruth's name neat on top, I didn't read them because that wasn't mine to read. A scarf, soft, the color of dishwater in good light. Jules closed the pouch, jaw tight. He's not a villain, she said, standing. He's a flood. I nodded and didn't let that absolve him in my chest. Backups held the weird, 2 more burner phones still boxed, a roll of blue ribbon, a thrift store jacket with clean pockets, the kind of neutral clothes you wear when you're trying to disappear into a waiting room, a cheap plastic trophy that said MVP, Youth League on its base, Liam's name scratched in with a key. My stomach did a slow, wrong roll. I put the trophy back gently like it might crack. I didn't want that picture, not yet, not clean. Revenge tastes different if you salt it with pity too early. I stood in the middle and let all of it press on me. The need to smash and the need to sort wrestled until something steadier found me. Okay, I said, voice leveling. New plan. We take the whiteboard. We take the markers. We take the camp chair if we hate ourselves. Jules snorted softly. I kept going. We put the board in Ruth's living room or on her porch if she wants air. We build a boring, public schedule, rides, pharmacy runs, soup. We spread it across people who don't need to be saints. We leave nothing that looks like a cape. Mara's eyes flicked up. You're cutting him out? The question twitched at my ribs. I'm cutting him down to size, I said. He can have a slot like anyone. No more head of story. Just Friday at 4, take your mom to her thing. He hates that. He'll have to choose, actual help or the exit. Jules squeezed my shoulder. I'll rope the group chat. I know a pastor who loves clipboards. We'll make it idiot-proof. I huffed a laugh that turned into a breath I needed. Good. And I'm writing Ruth a note. Not about him. About what's hers. I pointed at the pouch with the folders and the heating pad. She decides what comes in. Not him. Not me. We loaded the board, the markers, the chair. I left the bins where they were, lids snapped. You don't torch a museum, you starve it. When we rolled the door down, the metal rattled my teeth. The key felt heavier in my palm than when we'd arrived. Back at the truck, Mara held the blue ribbon like a snake skin. What do I do with this? She asked, almost to herself. My hands itched to tie it to something and let the river take it. Keep it, I said. To remember what you won't accept again. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. We drove toward town with the whiteboard rattling and the markers chiming in their crate. Every bump wrote a little music. I sat forward, elbows on knees, like the road might buck us if I got lazy. The plan clicked in my head: Ruth's porch, neighbors, a cooler of water, a schedule filled in black ink while Liam learned to stand in line. I felt a heat low in my chest that wasn't anger this time. It was something like ownership. At the four-way by the church, Jules glanced over. You sure he won't crash this? He can show up, I said. He just won't be the show. The light turned green. We rolled. In the mirror, the river flashed once between roofs, and I let the sight pin the next step into place as we swung toward Ruth Street. Ruth's porch was small and tidy, the kind of place where a broom leans in the corner like it's part of the furniture. Wind chimes clinked a thin, unsure music. I carried the whiteboard like a door I meant to walk through. My palms were damp, the marker crate rattled. Ruth opened before I knocked twice, scarf on, eyes that had seen too many waiting rooms. Her gaze went from the board to my face to Mara half behind me, and something like relief and embarrassment crossed her features at the same time. I should have called, I said. But I figured asking in person was the adult move. My voice tried to stick, I swallowed and felt it scrape. She stepped back. If this is help that doesn't make me feel like a project, she murmured, come in. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. 2 plastic chairs faced a low table stacked with magazines whose covers promised miracles. I set the board by the window. Jules clicked open the legs of the camp chair with a snap that felt like commitment. Mara hovered near the doorway, hands tucked in her sleeves, eyes doing fast math on exits. It's your call, I told Ruth. Porch or inside? Names or initials? You get to decide how seen you feel. She let out a breath that trembled. Porch, she said. Sun makes people honest. She touched my forearm, light as lint. Thank you. We hauled the board back out. Jules texted the group. Within a handful of heartbeats, neighbors started appearing like the street had been holding them in the wings. Mrs. Delgado from the corner with a Tupperware the size of a tire. The pastor with a clipboard and a pen he loves too much. 2 teenagers with chalk who asked if they could draw a giant arrow so people wouldn't miss the board. Make it pretty, Ruth said, and they grinned like she'd given them a job with a badge. I uncapped a marker. My hand shook once, then found a line. Rides, I wrote. Pharmacy. Meals. Laundry. Sitting. I made rows, left wide boxes, looked at Ruth after each one. She nodded, chin set. We filled a few squares with safe names, Jules, me, Mrs. Delgado, pastor scrapbook, and left a thin column for Liam, small, ordinary, the size of everyone else's. I could feel my heart thud against my ribs in slow, heavy beats, each one a nail I was hammering in straight. He showed up halfway through the second column, head down, keys jangling like a nervous habit. He froze at the sight of the crowd and the whiteboard, the way his mother's porch had become a clean little stage with no trapdoor. His eyes flicked to me, to Mara, to Ruth sitting upright on the plastic chair like a queen who also knows how to fold towels just right. What is this? He asked, voice raw around the edges. Help, Ruth said before I could. The boring kind. He looked like he might bolt, then smoothed his face into calm. I can organize it, he offered. I've got a system. You're a name, not a system, Jules said, bright as glass. She tapped the column with her nail. Pick a slot. Color rose under his collar. He stared at the boxes like they were math he used to be good at. Friday, he said after a beat, pointing. Rides. Write it, I said, handing him the marker. Our fingers didn't touch. He took it like it was heavier than plastic has any right to be and wrote Liam in careful letters that wobbled on the first stroke. My jaw unclenched one click. I brought something, I said, and set the canvas pouch on the table by the door. The keys to the storage unit were inside, the index card with his block print, the heating pad, the folders. I kept the trophy out of sight. This is yours, I told Ruth. Keep, toss, burn, I don't care. It's not mine. It was just, in the way. She brushed her scarf, fighting emotion like static. I'll sort it, she said. When I have hands. Liam's eyes snagged on the pouch and then on me. Something complicated flickered. I was trying to get ahead, he said, soft. If I don't keep moving, you know, everything. His hands made a falling motion he didn't finish. Work's been thin. The truck's making a noise. And the scan, he bit the last word in half and swallowed it. I felt the old tug toward pity, hot and traitorous. I let it pass like weather. You could have told me, I said. You told strangers instead. His mouth tightened. Telling you makes it real, he muttered, and I heard the boy in that, the one who scratched his name into a plastic trophy to pretend it said more. The pastor cleared his throat gently. We're filling Tuesday meals, he said, businesslike. Who's got a casserole pan and a pulse? Hands went up. Names flowed. Chalk squeaked out a bright arrow on the walkway pointing to the board. Sun slid lower and made the porch rails throw stripes across Ruth's knees. The hum in my jaw softened. My pulse settled into the work. Mara leaned close enough that I could feel the heat of her. You're really doing it, she whispered. You took the costume off him. He can keep the cape, I said. It just doesn't come with an audience. Ruth reached for the marker then, hands steady. I'll sign myself for sitting, she said. People forget I know how to be with me. We laughed, a clean, small thing. Liam looked like he'd missed the joke and knew it. He put the marker down like surrender and stepped back into the sunlight he didn't control. A sparrow hopped on the rail. Somewhere down the block a dog barked in that bored, satisfied way of dogs who know exactly where they live. My phone buzzed on the table, an unknown number I almost ignored. I picked up without thinking. A man's voice slid in, cheerful and wrong. "Hey, champ," he said. "Tell your boy I found the rest of those fees, and if he can bring cash tonight, I'll hold the spot. Wouldn't want Coach Hal to think he stopped showing up." My mouth went dry. I looked up. Liam's eyes slammed into mine, then skittered away. The line hissed like a match. "Who is this?" I asked, already feeling my mouth go dry. The porch went quiet enough to hear the wind chimes mispronounce a note. "Coach Hal," the man said, friendly like a whistle. "Rec League. Tell your boy I found the rest of those fees. If he can bring cash tonight, I'll hold the spot. Wouldn't want Coach Hal thinking he stopped showing up." He laughed at his own name. I didn't. "You called Rowan," I said, steady. "Whose spot?" There was a beat of confused air. Liam's kid. Evan. He's got an arm. Be a shame." Every eye on the porch swung to Liam. My stomach did a slow, mean turn. He stared at the railing like it might buckle for him. Ruth's fingers tightened on her scarf. Mara's hood shadowed her eyes, but I saw the flinch anyway. I hit speaker and set the phone on the table beside the whiteboard. "Coach," I said, politeness like a blade. "We're organizing Help Out Loud. No cash meets. What are the fees for?" "Season dues," he said, suddenly careful. "Uniforms. Snack schedule. You know how it is." Liam's been solid, late sometimes, but solid. "Whose contact sheet lists my number?" I asked. Silence, papers shuffling. "Yours is secondary," he said. "Handwriting's his." My jaw clicked. Liam lifted both hands like surrender and apology got stuck on the same knuckle. "I was going to tell you," he tried. "After what?" I asked. "After you turned a kid into a secret too?" On speaker, Hal cleared his throat. "Look, if this is a bad time." "It's the perfect time," I said. "Is Evan's parent looped in?" "Granddad's around," Hal said. "Works nights." "Good man, tired." Liam stepped up. I looked at Ruth. She read the math on my face and nodded once, grief and pride wrestling in her eyes. "We're not punishing the kid," she murmured. "We're punishing the lie," I said, and something inside me went from rattling to locked. I moved the phone in front of Liam. "You're going to speak," I said. On speaker. No Kate voice. Just your voice. Color climbed his neck. He leaned in. "Coach, it's me," he said, too soft. "I can't do envelopes anymore. If Evan needs help, it goes on a schedule. Rides, sure. Gear, if we can swing it together. No more midnight cash." Hal exhaled. "I don't care how the money flows," he said. "I care that the kid shows up." "Then you'll get a ride column," I said. "And you'll get my number only if Evan's granddad wants it there." Jules tapped the whiteboard. "We can do Tuesdays," she called, cheerful like a dare. "Who's got a minivan and patience?" Mrs. Delgado raised a hand without looking up from her Tupperware. Liam rubbed his palm over his face, relief and shame grinding. "I was trying to make it easier," he muttered. "You made it heavier and hid it," I said. My hands trembled once and then steadied. "Coach, tell Evan to bring his glove. We'll be in the bleachers with a calendar, not cash." "You got it," Hal said, still somewhere between wary and grateful. "Tell Liam he's still on the roster. He just, needs to stop running wind sprints in the dark." "We heard," I said, and ended the call. The porch hummed again. The teens chalked stars around the arrow like the sky had signed off. Ruth leaned back, shoulders lowering a notch. Mara looked at Liam the way you look at a house that finally stopped leaning. He tried for me then, voice smaller. I wasn't hiding a son, he said, throat tight. I was sponsoring a kid. I thought if I kept it quiet, it would stay clean. Work's thin, Mom needs scans, the truck. He stopped, jaw locking like it hurt. I wanted one thing to be good and simple. You kept trying to buy that feeling with secrets, I said. It doesn't take. He nodded, eyes wet but not breaking. You're right. I swallowed the pity that rose anyway. It tasted like rust. Here's how this works, I said, and I felt the revenge I'd chosen land softly, decisively. You're a name on a board. You get a slot. You don't get the story. If you miss a slot, someone else fills it and you apologize without making a speech. Ruth gets to say no. Mara gets rides without whispers. Evan gets to throw a ball because neighbors showed up, not because you snuck envelopes behind a shed. Ruth lifted the marker, wrote her own initials in a square under sitting, and gave me a look that was half blessing, half dare. And I get to say when I'm tired, she added. Without anyone turning it into a mission. Exactly, I said, and my chest loosened like a knot that had finally listened. Liam stared at the whiteboard for a long second, then reached out like the thing might bite and added his name under Friday, rides. The letters came out shaky and honest. He set the marker down, palms open, and stepped back into the sunlight he didn't control. Mara slid beside me, voice low. You didn't burn him, she said. You built a fence. Fences keep things where they belong, I said. Heroes on porches. Help in daylight. Jules bumped my shoulder. You still want that cake? She asked, a grin cracking her voice. My stomach, traitor, growled. I nodded. We ate off paper plates while the board filled with small squares of responsibility that looked, from a distance, like a quilt. My body finally stopped bracing for a blow that wasn't coming. When I stood to throw my plate away, I caught Liam watching me, no plea, just a quiet inventory of what he'd lost and what he hadn't. I let him look. The sun slipped lower, painting the porch rails gold. Somewhere down the block, a whistle blew from a practice field, and a kid who might have been Evan hooped like good news. I felt the river inside me change direction, not back to where it started, but forward to someplace I hadn't planned. After the porch thinned out, the street felt like it finally exhaled. I stacked plates, wiped frosting off the rail with my thumb, and noticed my hands had stopped shaking. Ruth talked soft with Mrs. Delgado about soups. Liam hovered by the steps, 1 foot lower like he couldn't pick a height. I'll show for the ride slot, he said. Good, I answered. Then you'll go home. Not mine. He nodded, eyes catching on the pouch by the door. You kept the trophy? I left it where it was, I said. Some things don't help right now. Jules clapped and asked who wanted the corner piece of cake, and people laughed because bodies like normal. I took the cooler under my arm and walked to the truck feeling, for the first time in a while, inside my own skin. On the ride back, Mara stared out the window, ribbon coiled in her palm like a thing she'd decided not to wear again. He might text, she said. He can write in his square, I told her. Everything else is noise. At my place the house smelled like river air and paint dust. I set the cooler in the sink, laid the storage index card beside the fixing notebook, and pulled his duffel from the closet. Jeans. Shirts. The hoodie with the frayed cuff he liked to tug. My hands knew the shapes too well, that hurt more than the motel soaps. I packed the ribbon spool, the spare travel mug, the burner box. I left the Polaroid of me on the fridge face down under the magnet. I don't know why. It just felt right to let my own face stay home. Jules knocked and stepped in. Need hands? Always. We wrote a short note to Ruth, yours to keep, refuse, or redistribute. No explanations owed. Keys inside. Jules underlined the last line like a promise. We carried the duffel to the truck. The river was a dark ribbon between the trees. At the lane, a car idled. Liam stood beside it, hands in pockets, expression naked in a way that made my neck tighten. Jules squeezed my wrist, then drifted back, leaving space without abandoning the border. Don't come in, I said. I won't. He looked at the bag. It wasn't all bad, right? We had real too. We did, I said. You hid it under a play. I can't unknow that. He nodded, jaw working. I keep trying to get ahead of the bad, he said. If I stack enough chairs, maybe the storm goes around. Then I end up standing on the chairs while everybody else is wet. Not forgiveness, just recognition, moved in me. You don't have to explain tonight, I said. You have a square on a board. That's plenty. He let out a laugh with no light in it. You turned me into a chore. I turned you into a neighbor. Try it. Can I help you carry? No, I said, gentle. Go sit with your mom. Learn the nurses' names. Ask when the office actually picks up. Put it in your square. He swallowed, weirdly relieved. He looked toward the boathouse and flinched like the building had said his name. There's one more thing I should tell you. Later, I cut in. After you show up enough that the urge to pose gets bored. He nodded small, like he'd been sized correctly at last, got in the car, and left without drama. Gravel settled. Frogs started up in the ditch like someone had wound them. We dropped the duffel on Ruth's porch beside the pouch and the note and left without knocking. On the way back, Mara's phone buzzed with nothing important. I watched the dark road, the hole in the guardrail, the way the river kept appearing like a thought that wouldn't leave. At the house, I killed the lights and stood by the sink, palms flat on the cool metal, listening to water chew the dark. The revenge I picked wasn't fireworks. It was the slow, relentless removal of his stage. It was paperwork in chairs and chalk and neighbors. It was making him live without the costume until his reasons had nowhere else to hide. Later, with the house quiet and the sink cold under my palms, the screen door ticked against its frame like a shy knock. I didn't jump. When I opened it, Ruth stood there with a thermos and the kind of tired that sits in the bones. I won't stay, she said. I came to return a thing that isn't mine. She held out the plastic trophy, his name scratched into the base. It looked smaller than it had in storage light. Keep it or toss it, I said. I can't carry it. She set it on the rail. He sat his slot, she said. No speech. He drove, he waited, he wrote, done, like a kid with a chore chart. After, he told me why he builds boxes. I held the door with my hip. I'm listening. When he was little, she said, storms took the power a lot. His daddy would vanish. I kept a bag by the door, flashlight, crackers, the good blanket. He packed his own. If he could list it, he could live with it. In school he hated group work because people messed up his order. He scraped MVP on that trophy the week he waited hours on a curb after practice and nobody came but a janitor. He decided he'd never be the kid waiting again. He'd be the one who shows up. Even when nobody asked. My molars ached. So when the scan got scheduled, he made a project out of breathing. And when jobs dried up, she added, he borrowed pride from being needed. He told me he kissed that girl once in a room that smelled like bleach and shame, then felt sick and bought distance with money he didn't have. He kept going because stopping meant saying the quiet parts out loud. He's not good at that. She met my eyes. It's not your job to teach a man what he refuses to practice. I'm not taking him back, I said. I'm just not going to be his audience. Then we're square, she said, relief loosening her mouth. She touched my sleeve. You did right by me. After she left, I set the trophy in the junk drawer face down, a small plastic comet. I slept, finally, the deep, ugly kind that wakes like a truce. By morning the whiteboard was already sending out little texts, check marks, a changed ride, Mrs. Delgado's soup, Jules' joke about labels. Mara sent a picture of the ribbon tied to her backpack strap, not her wrist. Reminder, not costume, she wrote. I smiled into my coffee. At the field later, Evan threw like he meant it. We sat on the bleachers with paper cups. Ruth wore her scarf loose and yelled when he struck a kid out. Liam was there, 2 rows down, quiet as a folded towel. He handed out orange slices, wiped a spill, and when he caught me looking, he nodded once, not asking. My jaw unwound a notch. On the walk back to my truck, he waited at the fence, nerves chewing his lip. I'm not asking for anything, he said. I just need to say it plain. I thought fixing proved I was worth keeping. He swallowed. I'm learning that worth doesn't show up on a list. Something unclenched behind my ribs. Be boring for a while, I said. Harder than it looks. He almost smiled. I'm trying. Good, I said, and headed for the path. He didn't follow. Back home, the river moved like it always does, indifferent, busy, honest. I opened the boathouse and let the door breathe. I tossed the spool of blue ribbon into a bin with rope and tarps, where it became just another tool. I scrubbed the workbench until it gave up the last dull ring of Motel shampoo. My hands stung in a clean way. When I was done, I stood on the porch and listened to frogs stitch the dark back together. Here's the thing I know now, revenge doesn't have to look like fire. Sometimes it's a calendar everyone can see and a man learning to shut up and show up. Sometimes it's keeping the photo on the fridge face down until you can turn it over without shaking. I checked the latch on the screen door. It finally caught. The river threw my face back at me, plain as a window, and I didn't look away.